Shut up and sit down.
Okay, so I'm here with Georgie, and Georgie's had some pretty interesting experiences in the on some of these local hiking trails. Georgie, you want to tell everybody what you've seen?
One trail in particular I hiked twice. The first time was in May of 2019, and when I went, I started following the lower trail because it was an easier trail to walk on. And as I was following it, and it's clearly marked, I felt for some reason to go a different direction. So I wandered off trail and I went towards the way I felt like I should be going. And then I found a very interesting tree. It was a really tall tree. A lot of the bark was pulled off the tree, and there was X's in a line all the way up the tree. It looked like they were pushed out of the tree from within. They weren't actual indented or carved. And it was also smooth to touch.
So I've seen the pictures that you took of this tree, and everything, the bark was smooth, completely smoothed off, and these X's do look raised. Now, what were your thoughts? What do you think might have put these marks in the tree?
At the time, I had no idea at all. Like, I've hiked the woods a lot. I grew up in the woods since I was like 4 years old with my dad. I've never seen anything like that. So I honestly had no clue. I just felt for some reason like I was drawn that way. Like I was supposed to go there and see this tree. Okay. Why, I have no clue.
Now, I remember you telling me, is there a history in that area where this tree was located?
I didn't know the history until I left that day after I got completed with my hike. When I left, because I parked like a half mile, 3/4 of a mile away and hiked into the trail. When I left, it's a really sharp, it's worse than a 90-degree turn to get out. And there was a pole, and when I was pulling out, I noticed something on top of the pole, and I wasn't sure what it was, so I turned back around and went back down to see what it was. And it was an actual sign that said the area was, a massacre happened in the 1700s between the settlers and the Delaware Valley Indians, and that nobody survived.
Okay.
And that kind of gave me the creeps after my entire hike, but I didn't know that prior.
Now, I remember you told me that you took down notes after you left the area. What happened with that notebook?
I have my notebook. But after I got done with the hike, because it was so bizarre and I never, experienced anything to that nature, I felt like I needed to write it down so I didn't forget, but it's kind of ingrained in my memory, so...
Now, you said you wrote down everything except that tree?
For some reason, that tree is what I felt really drawn to it, and when I was just rereading my notes back over, I didn't mention anything about the tree at all. And I actually felt a strong desire a month later, after that first hike, to go back to see this tree for some reason. And then more weird stuff happened.
What weird stuff?
When I went back the second time, I specifically went for the tree, and the tree is off trail, but I actually remembered right where the tree was. So I went back to the tree, and for some reason I brought one of my crystals with me. When my intuition tells me something, I kind of just listen to it.
Okay.
So I went back to see this tree, and I was just kind of hanging out by the tree, and then I started exploring the close vicinity of the tree just to see what was around it, and there was a stone wall. And when I walked up to the stone wall, my whole body told me, don't cross the wall, do not go past the wall.
Okay.
So I didn't. And it wasn't that far from the tree. So I turned around and I went back to the tree, and I was just kind of hanging out by the tree. And a kid walked past me. And I didn't think much of it. I thought maybe he wandered off trail as well as I did. He walked up to the wall and stood there for a minute, turned around, came back through, and walked past me like I wasn't there. And I could, I saw the kid like I'm looking at you. And he was a tall kid. He had curly, light-colored hair. He had blue jeans on, sneakers, and his shirt looked like it was from the 70s.
Okay.
He just kind of had that vibe. But he walked right on by, and then after he did, wasn't even a few minutes, it was shortly after, I decided to carry on, and I was going to hike more instead of just leaving. And I went down to the river, and the kid was standing there. And the trail was supposed to go straight, but for some reason it goes through the river.
Okay.
So when I walked up behind him, I said hello, and then he turned around and looked at me, and he acknowledged that I was there. And we started having a little conversation. He told me he was in a local university, which we don't really have one here. We have a community college.
Yeah, that's it.
Sullivan. He was an engineering student, and that he was staying in a cabin nearby in the woods. And there could be a cabin, but I don't know of one. And then we just chatted for a minute or two, and then he asked me what I was up to, and I'm like, I'm just going on a hike, short and sweet. And he looked at me and he asked me if I was hurt or something because I had a bulge on my side. It was actually my handgun underneath my hoodie. And I just lifted up the part of my hoodie, and I'm like, no, I always carry a gun with me when I hike in the woods by myself. And he asked me, what for? And I told him, well, this time of year, mama bears have babies. You don't want to aggravate mama bear. And it's better to be safe and sorry. It's easier to back up and leave than to start a fight. But
Plus you got weirdos in the woods like you just hanging out.
But I grew up in the woods, so I feel comfortable in the woods. I don't normally feel threatened, but you never know. Better be safe than sorry. And it's just the way I was raised.
So what happened after you showed him your sidearm?
He just said, oh, okay. And then a few minutes after that, because we were just standing there looking at the water, he turned around and went to walk back off. Now, if you turn around, the area right behind where we were standing, the trail does not go. The trail veers off back towards the right and then goes up a hill. But if you look straight through, and it's an easy 100-yard, you can see. The trees are sporadic. There's not a lot of underbrush, so you can see. It's clear. And then on top, it goes flat, and then there's a hill at the end of the flat. And on top, you can see where the trail goes back up. Well, the kid started walking straight across like it was a shortcut. And he was only, 50 feet or so in front of me. And I spun around and I was going to follow him back through and go up the shortcut and leave. But as I was walking through the flat, and like I said, I could clearly see the kid in front of me. He disappeared.
He just vanished from the trail?
Disappeared. We weren't on trail. We were in like a little opening. Okay. There were sporadic trees, but
there, in your visual, there's no place he could have went to.
No, there wasn't a lot of scrub brush or roadie or anything in the way. And
so, what kind of vibe did this kid give you?
I kind of just, I didn't honestly think he was telling me the truth because I know we don't have a university here.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel out of place. There was nothing to block the visual.
Yeah.
It's not like he could have ducked behind a tree and I couldn't have seen him. And like I said, I was directly behind him, roughly 50 feet or so. And he just disappeared. And I carry two phones when I hike. I carry my regular cell phone and I carry my old phone, and I use an app called All Trails.
Okay.
Because I like to wander off trail and I don't like to stay where I belong. It helps you navigate back out. But it has a compass on it as well.
Yeah.
And I noticed that when the kid disappeared, and he wasn't a kid, I call everybody a kid. He was probably in his early 20s, maybe 19 at the youngest.
Okay.
So on the all app trail, you can navigate back to where you need to go safely. When I noticed looking down, my compass was like spazzing out. It couldn't determine what direction I was going in, and I was standing completely still.
Okay.
I might even have the video still on my old phone that I recorded it because I just felt it was really bizarre.
Yeah.
Especially since I was standing still and I didn't know what direction I was headed in. I also have screenshots of me from the All Trails app saying where I was supposedly supposed to be, and I know I was not because I had both phones.
And this app you use all the time when you're like out hiking, and this is the first time it's ever done that to you?
Yeah, I only use the app in places I'm not familiar with. A lot of places I don't use it only because I know the general area, but this was only the second time I went to the spot.
Okay.
And it's a rather large spot. I even stumbled upon signs during my first hike up there with restricted access signs in the middle of the woods, and I have no idea why. I took pictures of those as well.
Now, were these on the trail or off the trail?
Off the trail. I wander off a lot.
Restricted access. Yeah.
And it was literally in the middle of the woods. Because my first hike had quite a bit of bizarre things going on. And I really had no desire to go back there to hike again, but like I said, for some reason, this tree made me feel like I needed to go back. And I don't know why. And I actually haven't been back to that hiking area since.
Now, back to the tree. Now, you said these marks on this tree go, 30 feet up to the tallest one?
At least. Probably higher. Because I'm roughly 5'4", and they're way above my head.
So yesterday I had you send me pictures of the trees, and I sent them to a person I know, Lakea, and she just so happened to be standing next to someone who works in the lumber industry, and she let him take a look at it, and he said they noticed that there's woodpecker marks in there, and that they would put X's on a tree to mark that it's been taken care of, but he said they would not go 30 feet up. He has no explanation for that.
Yeah, it was probably higher than 30 feet, honestly. Just
guesstimation?
Yeah, I mean...
Yeah. Just well above your head.
Oh, well above, yeah. Even if I jumped, there was no way I was even getting near it.
Now, and that was the only tree in that area that looked like that?
Yeah, and there was a tree next to the tree with the X's that was decimated by woodpeckers. I took pictures of that tree as well because they totally obliterated the tree, but this tree didn't seem like... It seemed like it left it alone. Almost like it avoided it. And for some reason, there was no bark all the way up the tree. And then once you got past all the X's, there was bark.
That's strange.
And it was smooth because I touched the tree.
Now, when you touched the tree, did you get the feeling like maybe you were drawn to have physical contact with this tree?
The first time I visited the tree, absolutely. And the second time I went back, I felt because the tree was calling me. And that's why I took one of my crystals with me. And I actually stood there and I held my crystal to the tree. And then shortly after is when that kid appeared.
Now, is there, have you, on some of your hikes or just outings in general, have you come across any other weird stuff?
I've hiked down in the, Bashakil? And I found weird... It was off trail again. I found weird wooden structures, like made out of sticks, almost like really short teepees.
Okay.
But they were just sticks. And I have pictures of that too.
Now, I remember you telling me about some strange lights that you have seen. Can you tell me about that?
The strange lights I saw, it was me and my friend, and we were down in Narrowsburg at Landers Campgrounds. And it was like the off season, so we were kind of like very few people there. And it was like 2, 3 in the morning, and we just went out with our blankets and we were stargazing. And we both have apps on our phones that tell you what constellations are in the sky. It tells you if a plane's crossing or if there's any satellites going through. And there was nothing at the time, and we saw weird pattern moving lights. And it lasted a good half hour or so. We sat there watching them.
Were they just traversing back and forth in the sky?
It wasn't that they were really going back and forth. It was more like they were running a pattern in the same area.
Would you say like a search pattern?
It wasn't wide, so I wouldn't really... It was like a specific spot that they kept.
What color were these lights?
They were like not a red, but not an orange, kind of like in between.
Like an amber, like a street color, like a caution light and a stop light.
A little darker,
Little
something
darker
like
than
that. But there was no planes or anything in the way. And normally on an airplane, there's more than just like 2 lights or so.
Yeah.
So we couldn't figure it out. And like I said, we had our app going. We both have the apps. And we didn't see satellites going through, anything going through. And it was more than one. It wasn't just one.
How many would you say? How many did you visually see?
There was 2 or 3. I don't exactly remember.
Did they do anything besides go around and say this grid pattern?
No, it wasn't technically like a grid pattern. It was a weird like shape they were going in. It's more like something geometrical. But no, once they kind of did whatever they were doing, they just were gone. Like we didn't see them fly off or go off or anything.
So like how high would you say they were? Were they like tree?
Oh no, they were up. They were way up.
Okay. Interesting. Any other weird, interesting stuff? I'm like a repository for this stuff. I love this stuff.
Well, in all honesty, a lot of it I don't pay any mind to. I just kind of like throw it in the back of my head. But the only other thing offhand that comes to knowledge, my thoughts is my ex-boyfriend and I were actually driving out here in 17B.
Okay.
We were going from like here, White Lake, towards like Monticello. And we thought we saw a deer, but we weren't sure. I mean, we were moving. And something jumped over the back of our pickup. We were driving a Silverado. And it cleared the bed of the truck while going down the road. And it was, 3 lanes wide.
That doesn't sound like no deer to me. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, I've deer hunted all my life. I've never seen anything like that either, but you try to tell yourself stuff to make yourself not insane.
No, I didn't see that.
It's easy to try to convince yourself, it was a deer. Knowing that, he would have been on the road somewhere hit if it was an actual deer.
Yeah.
And I've seen deer jump, but I've never seen them clear anything like that, especially moving.
So, I got a question. We work together, right? I've heard stories about weird stuff going on in this house. I've had an experience where I was working with a crock pot. You remember that day? And the crock pot
Yes.
kept turning on and off while it was sitting in a locked office. Has there been any... Because you've been here how long?
13 years.
13 years.
Yes.
See, I've only been here a year. Has there been any other weird stuff in this
here?
house?
Yes, absolutely.
Let's
Absolutely.
dive right in.
One of the biggest ones that gets me is I believe in a lot of stuff, but mentally I'll tell myself that it's not real just to get by through the day. When I honestly deep down know better. I was new at the house, and one of our residents would come home roughly around 2 o'clock. And he was a very nice guy. He liked to play like little jokes on people all the time, but I was mopping the back hallway, and I saw somebody walk out of the last bedroom into the second to last bedroom. Like, I'm looking at you. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know he got home. Oh my God, no, somebody was here, blah, 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 freaking out because somebody has to be here while they're home.
Yeah.
So I walk into the bedroom I saw him walk into, or walk into, and I saw nobody. I looked in the closets, under the bed, nothing. And the individual, he wouldn't, hide like that. He would just stand behind the door and they'd just laugh at you. He was very cute. So I'm like, okay, I didn't sleep enough, whatever. And I went back to doing my job, and I ended up down here by the office mopping, and then I saw the same person walk into the bedroom at the end of the hallway, which is closest to me, and I didn't know who it was. And I honestly went outside and I waited for my manager and assistant manager to come back because it freaked me out. Like, it just gave me that, like, yuck feeling.
Yeah.
And I knew it wasn't one of our residents. So I sat outside and they got back and they kind of laughed at me, and I explained the situation and I described the guy to them. And my manager was like, hold on a minute. And she came in the house and dug around, and she came back with an old photo, and she's like, and these people looked for me, and I'm like, yeah, it was that dude right there. He was actually a guy that used to live here that passed away, and I never even met him.
He had passed away before you even started working here.
Yeah, and the picture wasn't like it was on the wall or anything. She had to go and dig it out. And then my coworker and I that worked during the day, our one resident used to yell obscenities all the time, and we sitting here, and we both heard it. Like, we looked at each other like, did you hear what I just... like, totally creeped out. And there's been a lot in this house. This room next door...
The rec room.
Yeah, the rec room. Our old staff, he didn't like it in there. He would get the creeps a lot. And he wasn't that kind of person. But one of the residents before we both started actually died in that room.
Okay.
And it was just weird because he waited to die because his family were visiting that day. And he waited till they all left to go to lunch and then called out for his mommy and then died.
Wow.
Yeah. A lot of strange things happen around me.
So I'd like to thank you for telling me your stories, Georgie. And if you go out this weekend, please look up for any UFOs, because I'll be asking you about it next weekend.
Yeah, I'll be out there for 4 days, so I'll let you know.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Seriously, thank you. And this has been an Impromptu Truth with your host, The Truth, and my special guest, my coworker, Georgie. And you guys have a good day. See you later.
Shut up and sit down.
Okay, so I'm here with Georgie, and Georgie's had some pretty interesting